On the 13th of December 2007, a 66-year-old British Army officer named Sir Miles Hunt Davis walked into the Royal Courts of Justice in London with a folder. Inside the folder were copies of 10 letters. 4 of those letters had been typed on a Buckingham Palace typewriter in the summer and autumn of 1992. They were not the originals. The originals had been sent, addressed to a single recipient, 15 years earlier, and the originals, by the palace's own admission, were lost. What Hunt Davis carried into the courtroom that morning were the carbon copies the writer had kept. The other 6 pages in the folder were handwritten. They were addressed to Dearest Pa. They were signed, in the writer's own hand, Diana. The man who had written the 4 typed letters was, by then, 86 years old. He had not testified at the inquest into the death of his former daughter-in-law. He would not testify. His private secretary, Hunt Davis, was as close as the Duke of Edinburgh would come to the witness stand. The folder was the substitute. The folder was, in effect, the testimony. This is the story of what was in it, and of what was, by then, no longer in anyone's hands at all. The discovery. The official disclosure was made on the morning of the 13th of December 2007, 60 days into the inquest into the deaths of Diana, Princess of Wales, and Dodi Al-Fayed, and 10 years and 3 months after the crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The disclosure had been ordered by Lord Justice Scott Baker, the coroner appointed to the inquest. He had ruled, after argument from counsel for Mohammed Al-Fayed, that the letters between the late princess and Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, were relevant to the question of whether the Duke of Edinburgh had been hostile to Diana in the years before her death. The Fayed legal team alleged he had been. The palace position was that he had not. The letters, the coroner ruled, would resolve the question, but they would not be released in full. Only the opening and closing paragraphs of each would be shown to the jury. The middle paragraphs, by Scott Baker's ruling, were too intimate. Source: Ruling of Lord Justice Scott Baker, Inquest into the deaths of Diana, Princess of Wales, and Mr. Dodi Al-Fayed, December 2007. Transcript published by the Inquest Secretariat. Hunt Davis took the stand. He confirmed the provenance of the letters. He confirmed that Philip's originals, the actual sheets of paper sent to Diana in 1992, had not been recovered. A statement issued by Buckingham Palace 5 years earlier, in 2002, had already said as much. The original letters, the palace had announced, have apparently been lost. What remained then was this: 4 typed carbon copies, 6 handwritten replies, and the testimony of a man who had not written any of them, but who had, for many years, served the man who had. That was the artifact, the context. June 1992. The first of Philip's 4 letters was written in early June of 1992. To understand why it was written, you have to understand what happened on the 7th of June, 1992, the day Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story, was published in the Sunday Times. Morton's book, which the public did not yet know had been written with Diana's secret cooperation on cassette tapes she had recorded for him at Kensington Palace, described in detail the breakdown of her marriage to Prince Charles. It described her bulimia. It described her suicide attempts. It described her solitude inside the family she had married into 10 years earlier. It was the most damaging book published about the British royal family in the 20th century. And it was published while Diana was 30 years old, the mother of a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the daughter-in-law of the 71-year-old Duke of Edinburgh. Philip wrote his first letter to her shortly afterward. What followed, between June and the autumn of 1992, was a correspondence, 4 letters from him, 6 replies from her, that the royal household has, in the decades since, characterized as the most concentrated private intervention any senior member of the family made in the collapse of the Wales marriage. The correspondence ran for approximately 4 months. The Charles-Diana separation was announced by the Prime Minister, John Major, in the House of Commons on the 9th of December 1992, 11 weeks after the last of the 4 disclosed letters. The letters were, in effect, the last attempt. Letter 1, June 1992. The first letter, in the inquest's reconstruction, arrived at Kensington Palace within days of the Morton serialization. Diana's reaction to it is one of the few moments in the correspondence on which there is unusually clear witness testimony, because she did not read it alone. Rosa Monckton, one of Diana's closest friends, gave evidence to the inquest about that first reading. She told the court that Diana was, in her word, hysterical on opening the envelope. The princess's first reading of the letter, in Monckton's account, was emotional and frightened. Monckton sat with her. She read the letter herself. She told Diana that what she was holding was, in her own assessment, a very genuine offer of help from her father-in-law, not an attack, not a threat, but a man at the head of a family attempting to engage seriously with what had gone wrong inside it. Source: Rosa Monckton, Evidence to the Inquest into the Death of Diana, Princess of Wales, December 2007. Diana, in Monckton's account, came around. She wrote a reply. The reply is one of the 6 handwritten letters Hunt Davis produced to the court. In the disclosed opening of one of those replies, the inquest did not publicly attribute it to a specific letter in the sequence, only to the correspondence as a whole. Diana wrote to Philip, "Even if you are unable to succeed in this, I still would like you to know how much I admire you for the marvelous way in which you have tried to come to terms with this intensely difficult family problem." That is not the voice of a woman who feared the man on the other end of the correspondence. Whether the disclosure was meant to make that point, or whether it simply happened to make it, was the central question of the disclosure. Letters 2 and 3, July to August, 1992. The middle of the correspondence overlaps with the second of the catastrophes of 1992. On the 24th of August, the Sun newspaper published the transcript of a recorded telephone call between the Prince of Wales and Camilla Parker Bowles, a call from December 1989 of an intimate nature that had been intercepted and circulated to the press. The story would be known, by the end of the week, as Camillagate. It is in this period, late July through early autumn, that the second and third of Philip's 4 letters fall. Their content, in the inquest's partial disclosure, was characterized by something the popular accounts had not anticipated. The tone was warm. It was self-deprecating. It included, in one letter, a sentence that became the most quoted line of the whole disclosure. Philip wrote, "If invited, I will always do my utmost to help you and Charles to the best of my ability, but I am quite ready to concede that I have no talents as a marriage counselor." The 3 exclamation marks are not a transcription error. They are in the carbon copy. They were noted on the day by court reporters from The Times, The Daily Telegraph, and Time magazine. Time observed, with mild surprise, that the Duke of Edinburgh's typed punctuation read like that of a teenager. Diana's reply to one of the letters in this period, in another disclosed fragment, praised what she called his marriage guidance skills. The phrase was thanked her father-in-law's heartfelt and honest words. The opening of one of her letters to him began with the address she used throughout the correspondence, "Dearest Pa." Source: Disclosed extracts read into the inquest record, 13th of December 2007, reported by The Times, The Daily Telegraph, The Irish Examiner, and Time magazine the following day. That, the disclosure suggested, was the shape of the middle of the exchange, a father-in-law trying, a daughter-in-law replying. The tone was not the tone the conspiracy required. Letter 4, September 1992. The 4th and final letter in the disclosed set was dated to September of 1992. There were, by Hugo Vicker's more recent reading of the correspondence, the royal biographer was given access to the full set in connection with his work on the late Duke, 6 letters from Philip and 5 from Diana. The inquest received 4 and 6. The 2-letter discrepancy is the one we will come to. But the 4th disclosed letter, the one Hunt Davis produced in the courtroom, was the closing of the formal exchange. It was sent approximately 11 weeks before John Major's separation announcement in the Commons. By the time the 4th letter was written, the salvage attempt was, in any practical sense, over. Charles had decided. Diana had decided. The mechanics of separation were being worked out by lawyers and by the press office. The Duke of Edinburgh, in the disclosed end paragraphs of his 4th letter, was, by the inquest's reading, winding down rather than reopening. The signature on all 4 of Philip's carbon copies was the same, "Fondest love, Pa." That is the entire disclosed surface of the 4 letters, openings, closings, and the famous central self-deprecation. Everything else, the substance of the middle pages where the Duke's actual advice and assessment would have been, remained, by the coroner's ruling, sealed. The folder, in other words, had given the court only the edges of the picture. The counterclaim. The disclosure existed because of the counterclaim. For roughly a decade before the inquest, a steady drumbeat of allegation, by Mohammed Al-Fayed, by his lawyer Michael Mansfield QC, by Diana's former butler Paul Burrell, and by her one-time spiritual advisor Simone Simmons, had asserted that Philip's letters to Diana had been something very different from a fatherly attempt at help. In 2003, Paul Burrell had told British police, in a statement that became public, that the tone of some of Philip's letters had been cutting and cruel, though, Burrell added, the Duke had never threatened the princess. In a separate interview with the Mail on Sunday, Simone Simmons, who had served as Diana's healer from 1993, went further. She told the paper of the letters Diana had shown her. They were the nastiest letters Diana had ever received. She had death threats which were worded nicer than his letters. Source: Simone Simmons, interview with the Mail on Sunday, 2003. In the inquest itself, Michael Mansfield QC, representing Mohammed Al-Fayed, took the matter further still. He suggested to Hunt Davis on cross-examination that one of the letters had described Dodi Fayed as an oily bedhopper. Hunt Davis replied that the allegation sounds extremely unlikely, and the inquest documentary record did not support it. When Mansfield put it more directly, whether the letters expressed any wish that Diana be dead, Hunt Davis said, on the record, "I did not ever hear that." In his summary, Lord Justice Scott Baker ruled that the letters between the Duke and the Princess contained nothing to support suggestions they contained unpleasant, nasty, or insulting material. The jury verdict in April 2008 returned unlawful killing caused by the grossly negligent driving of the Mercedes and of the pursuing paparazzi. The verdict made no finding of hostility on the part of the Duke of Edinburgh. Counter-narrative. None of that has settled the question outside the courtroom. The Burrell account remains in print. The Simmons account remains in the Mail on Sunday archive. The Al-Fayed allegation remained in his public position until his death in 2023. Whether the documentary record settles the matter or simply documents the disputed surface of it is a question the inquest answered one way and a significant minority of readers have answered another. The destroyed letter. There is one part of the story the inquest could not address, because, by the time it convened, the documents in question no longer existed in any retrievable form. In 2002, Buckingham Palace had issued a statement responding to the first wave of press claims about Philip's letters. The statement read, in part, "The original letters sent by Prince Philip to the princess have apparently been lost." It went on, "He kept copies of his letters to her, and he also has the original replies from the princess. He started the correspondence in June 1992, in a friendly attempt to resolve a number of family issues which arose at the time leading up to the official separation of the Prince and Princess of Wales in December of that year." Source: Buckingham Palace Press Statement, 22nd of August 2002, issued by the Queen's Press Secretary. What the palace described as apparently lost was, in the reading several biographers have given since, more than a missing envelope. The originals of all 4 of Philip's letters, the sheets of paper that Diana actually read in her hands at Kensington Palace in the summer and autumn of 1992, appear never to have been recovered. The carbon copies survived. The originals did not. There is also the matter of the count. Hugo Vickers, the royal biographer whose 2025 reporting drew on access to the full correspondence, has described the exchange as comprising 6 letters from Philip and 5 from Diana, 11 items in total. The inquest received 10, 4 typed carbons from Philip, and 6 handwritten originals from Diana. The arithmetic does not match. Where the missing 2 letters from Philip are, whether the carbon copies were never made, whether they were made and lost, whether they were withheld from the inquest disclosure for reasons the coroner did not interrogate, or whether Vickers' count differs from the inquest's because of an editorial definition of what constitutes a letter, is not on the public record known. What is known is that, of an exchange the Duke's own household has now characterized, in 2 separate ways, as comprising either 4 or 6 letters from his side, 1, and possibly more, was destroyed. Ambiguity. That is the structure of the documentary record as we have it. 4 typed carbon copies of letters Prince Philip wrote in the summer and autumn of 1992. 6 handwritten originals of Diana's replies. The disclosed top and tail of each. The middle paragraphs sealed by the coroner. 2 further letters from Philip's hand, referenced by his subsequent biographer, that the inquest record does not include. The originals of all 4 disclosed letters lost. The man who wrote them did not testify before he died in 2021. What can be said on the surviving surface is consistent. The tone is warm. The salutation is "Dearest Pa." The closing is "Fondest love, Pa." The famous interior line is self-deprecating. The disclosed openings show concern. The disclosed closings show resignation. What cannot be said, on that surface, is what is in the missing middle paragraphs of the 4 letters that did survive, and what was in the 1 or 2 that did not. The Diana that the conspiracy required, the Diana frightened by a hostile father-in-law in the months before her death, does not appear in the openings or closings the inquest disclosed. Whether she appears in the sealed centers of those letters is, by the coroner's order, beyond the reach of the public record. That is the ambiguity of the artifact. It is also, in its way, the answer to the question the inquest was asked. The papers that survived have been read by enough people on enough sides of the question to constitute a documentary record. The papers that did not survive cannot be read. The arithmetic does not resolve, and it will not. To follow the rest of the documentary trail, the lost notes, the redacted memoirs, the boxes that did not arrive at the inquest because nobody could find them, the next file opens here on the channel.